back. It's the How To Homemaker. We're going to make some sourdough bread today. I'm hoping to shorten your process from starter to actual bread because my process was a while. When I first started, I read a lot of websites that were very in-depth, I read a lot of definitions because it was like they were speaking a different language almost. And it just, I had a starter and that was basically it. I had stuff that was happening in the oven every week until a certain point where I finally got my starter working to where I needed it to be, but the bread still didn't really look like bread. I had some bread that would flatten right out like a dinner plate, and it was still edible, like fluffy and stuff, but it was flat as a dinner plate. Or I had bread that didn't actually cook and it would stay a doughy mess even though it was in the oven for an hour. So I want to make it easier for you guys to get your, I already have a starter video out, so go from the starter to having delicious edible bread. It is a 3-day process making the bread. You have to, well, I'll show you in the video, I don't want to repeat myself, but yeah, make sure that you have 3 days in a row where you're going to be home. And that's basically all you need to know for now. At the end of the video, I'll tell you guys if I've met my 1-month anniversary goals that I've met for myself. I've been waiting for Monday morning to film this. So yeah, let's just get into the bread and we'll find out later if I made it or not. Okay, thanks guys. Okay, so step 1, the night before you do anything, you have to feed your starter. You'll notice, well, by the time you watch this, maybe you won't notice, but this is actually a few days before I have to feed it. Doesn't matter, you still need to take it out of the fridge. I've already dumped some out of here because every time you feed it, you need to, well, before you feed it, you need to dump a little bit out, and then you mix the flour and the water, and then you dump it in your existing living starter. So before this video happened, I measured everything out. Let's just put it together. Wow, 100 grams, which is, this is 100 grams, or it should be anyways. This doesn't actually matter, but I figured since it's here I might as well. That didn't work at all. Ah, seriously? Wow. That's okay. And then this should definitely be 100, so this will equal 200 and 1. Just mix it together. Now, how much you mix together before you make bread totally depends on how much bread you want to make. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. We will talk about the method of baking this later on in the video. I'm trying to stop repeating myself. This is what that looks like right now. Not too exciting. There we go. Now our starter is fed. We need to leave it on the counter now. Do not put it back in the fridge. When you put it in the fridge, the same things happen. It just happens a lot slower because it's cold. So we want this active and lots of bubbles and yeah, just a light fluffy. I'm gonna feed it one more time too tomorrow morning before I mix the dough and stuff like that. And well, I'm not gonna actually film it because I just showed you what it looks like. So, and normally you just have to do it once. I'm gonna do it twice just to make sure that everything's good for the video. That's just a precaution. Really, you just have to do this once. It'll be good tomorrow morning, but I just want to make doubly sure because this is going to be a long video. And I want it to be delicious. And also my husband is coming home. Surprise him with some sourdough. Yeah, so there you have it. Step 1, Feed your starter, leave it on the counter the night beforehand. So we're back the next day. I fed my starter and I'm just trying something out a little new visually here. So let's get going. We are doing the 1, 2, 3 method of making sourdough bread this morning. So you always start out with your starter. This is what a nice, light, fluffy, active, happy starter looks like. There's tons of bubbles in there. You can see that it's fluffy. It looks a lot different than when we pull it out of the fridge, dump some, and then feed it. Yeah, it just looks very healthy. So that's what you need to know. There is a test that you can do with your starter to see if it is doing well, and that is a float test. Let's see how it goes. Oh, it's not. Oh, it is kind of. I've had it before where it floats right at the surface, but it still is pretty fluffy in there, so it is active. I've also had it where it sinks right to the bottom like a rock, and my bread still, it looks and tastes just fine, so I wouldn't even really worry about that. I just kind of wanted to show you. So we're gonna do, I have my number 2 ingredient for this. It always goes starter, water, flour. Number 1 is starter, number 2 is water. Number 1 is starter, number 2 is water, number 3 is flour. I think I even said that right to start with, but carrying on. I have 500 grams of water weighed out already for you here. Just gonna zero it out and then put my 250 grams of water, 250 grams of starter into the water. The reason why I do that is honestly just because of dishes. I don't want to have to do a bunch of extra dishes, so if you all just put it in the one dish right in the beginning. It also helps to, once I get all the starter in here that I need, to mix the starter into the water and then put the flour in. That's a good part of the process. But yeah, just getting 250. Yeah, 100 more. This is where you have to be really careful to make your starter as big as you need it to be. I've had it where I've planned out a great big batch and then realized that my starter, I would have had to use all my starter, and you need to leave some over so it continues to grow. Almost there. Yeah, this is a nice starter. Oop. It's okay, that's just a little bit more yeast. So take that, get rid of the scale here. Just mix that up like that. It just helps when you go to put the flour in, then all of the yeast isn't sitting at a lump in the bottom. Just helps the mixing process. Now, the sourdough snobs are going to get mad at me for this one, but I usually just, well, I do it half and half. They all do it slow. I dump it all in there pretty much. But this is the third little thing I want to show you. I like to do a 40% whole wheat. So with these numbers, that's what this looks like. I have 450 grams of white flour in my mixture and 300 grams of whole wheat. I just found that during my process of making the bread that it just made the bread better. The 100% white loaves were not, I was expecting them to be like store-bought bread, store-bought sourdough bread I should say, but I found out afterwards that a lot of the markets that you go to, like Safeway or whatever, will, they'll use a dry yeast or they'll use an active yeast. Or not this is an active yeast, but you know, an instant yeast is what I'm trying to say. So they'll still use an instant yeast in their loaves that they do, and that's what gets that texture. So that's something that you should know if you're starting out this process, is your bread, unless you put an instant yeast in it, is never going to be like a grocery store bread. It will be like a baker bread, but even then I've heard that they put, it's just to get the product out faster, I believe, but this is how they used to do it 100 years ago, This is the tradition that you can pass down to your children. This is the active living thing that you've made to keep in your fridge for the rest of time. So yeah, I just make sure that it's all stuck together like that. And then after everything is mixed 100%, you take it out of the bowl here and you knead it for 10 minutes. And it seems like a really long time when you're doing it, but I promise you, it's when you make sourdough bread and you squish everything together like the kneading process, that is what creates the sourdough reaction within the bread. That's what creates the bubbles as well. So the more kneading that you do, as well as I've noticed the longer that I do this, the kneading process really makes the bread just stick together better, like the dough itself. It's kind of crumbly right now, as you can see, but after 10 minutes of kneading, this all just starts to go into one nice ball. Excuse me, I just got to put that in the sink there. Okay, so I will speed this part of the video up because you don't need to see me knead bread or dough for 10 freaking minutes, but I will speed this up and then, yeah, see you guys in 10 minutes. Okay, we're back an hour later. We're at the stage of the game where we're going to split it into 2 separate loaves, or however many loaves you have. See how much it rose within the past hour? Which is pretty good for active yeast. That didn't float, I should remind you. Okay, let's get this started because we want to split them evenly so that we know that the cooking time is going to work for both. And I know I talked about those proofing baskets earlier. Those are not for this stage yet. For this stage, you can go back and forth into your bowls because you're going to be doing stretch and fold after this. So, yeah, there's that. Let's see how much this weighs. So, about 1,500. We will split that up because that's actually perfect. I like doing an 800 gram loaf. So let's go 750. This dough is a little bit more stiff than what I've had in the past, but I've also, I've had good success with everything. That's the point of this video. Just because this isn't what I did before doesn't mean I'm not going to carry on, because as long as you have the process down, you're going to have something delicious at the end. I was going to say eventually, which might be the case for some of you. It sure was for me. So yeah, okay, we've got that now. I'm just going to separate that. We don't need the scale anymore. I'm just going to move that out of viewing range. And this is the stage of the game where we put the salt in. This is just crushed Himalayan salt. I have it I'm on the keto diet as well. So that's really good for that. And I'm just going to do an eyeballed half and half. Maybe not quite half and half. I'll leave some in there. It's just for flavor. Now you might be wondering why we didn't mix it in with the rest of it. Well, we're going to be doing some stretch and folds. And what that looks like, I'm about to show you here, is you take your dough, move that over, and you just stretch and you fold, and you do 1 corner, 2 corner, 3 corner, 4. Now I like to do 2 because it sometimes looks a bit messy like that. That wasn't a very good stretch, but that's okay because it's the second round. And I'm just trying to spread the salt. Oh, and there we go, it broke through. Now eventually the salt is just going to work its way through all of the layers because we're going to be doing many stretch and folds. I'll just do one to fold it in on itself now. Since it's the beginning, it doesn't really matter, but once we get to the second round of this, we have to remember what the bottom of our, I keep saying loaf, of our dough is. The bottom is this, and we kind of do that and put it in the, and even if it comes out of the bowl messy, because there, look, it sits like that. Now it might stick to the bowl. And I'll show you next round here, when we do another stretch and fold, I'll show you another thing that you can do inside the bowl to help the bread not stick. But what I'm trying to say is, even if the dough comes out and it's all sticky and it pulls apart, this is still your bottom. You still want to take the bread and fold it in on itself in that direction. Just keep that in mind because that's what creates the big bubbles while you're making your bread. This is the last step in making those giant sourdough holes. You know what I'm talking about? That are so delicious. Yeah, this is how you do it. So we'll do it to the next one here. Yeah, this is nice dough. I'm quite happy with this. Excuse me. The frog in my throat. Nice stretch. There we go. Now it's all folded in on itself. We've oriented it so that it's the bottom. There's another process that we do once we're done the stretch and fold. You put the bottom on the, and you do this. I'll show you eventually later. But that's another reason why we have to keep the bottom and the top. And yeah, you just work the salt through it and it'll eventually be in the layers of the dough and not mixed in with the liquid. So yeah. This is the third and final time we're going to, I just did my stretch and fold just now. I have got the dough sitting over here just off camera. These are the proofing baskets and we are going to put them into the proofing baskets now. You've seen in the sped up version that I put rice flour in the, I squirted some oil and put some rice flour on the oil. Well, now we're going to take the covers for our proofing baskets, coat them with water, put them in the basket, and then do the same rice flour process. Just 1 second, let me get them wet. Okay, so we're at this stage now. We want to put the dough that we've made already into the proofing baskets. This is the bottom, this is the top. We want to flip it around so that make sure you can still see me here. Just push these out of the way. Can you see that? Yep, okay, good. So now we just kind of want to take it and do this on the counter, and as I'm doing it, I'm kind of tucking a little bit underneath as I'm spinning it, and it just sort of does a last minute finishing tightening up of the loaf of bread that we're making here. Because a lot of times when you are making sourdough bread, you can get it to this point and it can still fall, just sink. So pick it up again, stick it upside down again, make sure it goes upside down, because when we go to bake it, we're going to flip it like this so that the bottom will be on the bottom. So make sure that that's upside down. I don't know if you noticed in the fast motion, but I made sure to pull all of the wrinkles out of this, because this dough seems pretty solid, but I've had dough before that's been really porous even at this point. It's been very sticky still. It still worked and was delicious, but it's been very sticky, stuck in little folds, and then it wrecked the top of the dough, because the transfer process to change it now from proofing basket to pizza stone is just a very delicate one. You have to do it careful or else the dough might flatten. So you really want to make sure that there's no wrinkles right there. I just about put that. Okay, yeah, and now this one is a little bit different because it's an oblong shape. So you basically, I'm just kind of taking little bits of the dough, kind of the same process, but I'm just tucking it under in a longer, more oblong fashion. And that's it. We just put it upside down in the proofing basket. We leave it on the counter again for another hour. And then after that, we don't touch it. We put it in the fridge overnight for 16 hours after the 1 hour of, I guess it would be rising. Yeah, would left on the counter here. I'm just trying to make it sink down, because when I put the plastic back over top, you don't want the plastic to stick to that either, because if you come back and the plastic is stuck to that and you rip it off, it kind of deflates the dough as well. Because these are doing really well. I think they're going to puff up pretty big come the time we put it in the fridge. So we'll just leave it like that and cover it up. Okay, day 3. I pulled this out of the fridge about an hour ago. These dough, both of them, they ended up very, very nice. That, you can see right there what I just did. That's the spring test. If you push it and it comes right back up to where it was before, that means you know it's ready to bake. So I'll just take my ring off here. Oh, and then take the lids off of these before my hands get dirty. I was going to mention, this is a good time to put your oats and your flaxseed on if you want to do things like that, but also you could have put it in the basket along with the rice flour that's on the side. You could have put some oats in there and then plop the bread down on top. And then you don't run the risk of putting oats on and then having them fall off. So there's that. Now I just wanted to show you this part. I'm only going to show you the one time here. This is how you flip it over. I take my parchment paper. This is for beginners. Use your parchment paper. Do not use wax paper. Wax paper will burn in the oven. But take parchment paper and fold it over top and then just flip it over like that. And that's the easiest way if you're a beginner to just do that. I don't know if you noticed before I did that, but it was quite fluffy and kind of coming apart. So I'm just going to take the time and just tuck it in a little bit. You're not really supposed to touch it at this stage because you don't want it to flop, but it's going to rise in the oven, so that's just fine. I'm going to pass on putting oats on because they are just going to fall off. I should have put them in the basket. So make a note of that. Just if you're going to use oats, put them in here before you proof it for the 16 hours like we just did. So this is called a lamb. It's spelt like lame. You cut the top of your sourdough because there's going to be a lot of moisture coming and being inside the dough, and so you want to make an escape route basically. And you get the lamb because it just cuts it very nicely. I started out, I had a knife, and I would run the knife across, and it would just sort of like drag the dough as well, and you don't really want that. You want the nice just slices that go in. And make sure you don't cut, like if it does struggle to cut, then take your lamb and cut the opposite way. Like it's always not, I mean, I don't mean to say always, but it's not always the nicest to cut down, but when I cut up like that, it's just perfect. So yeah, now we have that ready to go. As you can see right here, you have to preheat the oven to 450, and you put water in the oven. A lot of people, they use a cast iron pan, and I found I just use a cookie sheet, or not a cookie sheet, but like a cake pan, I guess, and I fill it full of water, and I put it underneath here, and the water comes up, and it surrounds this quite evenly. I found if I used a cast iron frying pan, sometimes the steam would only come up on one side, and you could really tell. What the steam does in the oven is creates that nice hard sourdough crust that everybody knows and loves, and then the inside stays really fluffy and just ready to eat. So yeah, this is all we have to do. It's ready to go in the oven. It's going to go in the oven for 25 minutes at 450, and then at 25 minutes we open up the oven, let out some of the steam, but don't take the water out. Decrease the temperature to 425 and bake for 55 minutes. This is, you'll take your sourdough journey as you will, but this is just like sometimes it's not always 25 minutes. Sometimes it's a half an hour because it rises and rises and it's not done rising yet. So this is basically whenever it's done rising. Well, and if it's way before 25 minutes, at least go 25 minutes. But if it's still rising at 25 minutes, let it rise before you decrease and take the steam out. So yeah, that's what we're going to do next. I'll show you in the sped up motion. And that's all I have to say. Let's get some sourdough bread. I just want to show you a quick tip on cooking sourdough. The top can crust and look completely cooked, and you'll know it's not if the bottom is not cooked. This is definitely, but you'll be able to tell if it's still doughy down there. I pulled this one out just visually because it looked like it was just done. It wasn't 55 minutes. This one was 55 minutes. The bottom is still cooked. It's still nice and soft on the inside, but the crust is just a little bit on that. So these are notes that you can take as you do this journey. You can say, well, 55 minutes was just a little bit too long for the 800 gram bread that we just made. You know, things like that. Write down the date and whatever you need to do. But yeah, this is still edible. This is still delicious, but always improve, always be better. And those are ways that you can do that. So yeah, watch out for if this is bready, put it back in the oven like right away. So. Boop. Hopefully that worked out for everybody today. If it didn't, as always, please let me know, because I'd love to make any other videos that would help you guys get better. Contact me in any way that you can. I'm on Facebook now. I'm on Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, things like that. Just let me know, and I want to help. The other thing, I want to, with the starter, continue on doing things like buns. I've never done buns before, so I will do a bun video eventually, as well as pizza dough. I've never done that before, so I would like to get that done for you guys eventually. And the moment that we've all been waiting for, I made my goals! I got 31 subscribers as of this morning, and just over 15 hours. It was 15.366 or something like that. So thank you everybody so much for all of your support and all of your help, and just, yeah, carry on watching my channel, because I do have big things planned. And remember, everybody makes mistakes in life. What matters is what you do about it. So yeah, bye.